Wheelchair-bound janitor receives party invitation, but his arrival leaves everyone speechless. Marcus Thompson stared at the golden envelope in his trembling hands, while malicious laughter echoed through the cold corridor of the company where he had worked for 8 years. His co-workers pointed and whispered, absolutely certain it was nothing more than a cruel, tasteless joke. That's when the cleaning supervisor approached, with a mocking smile on his face. "Hey, Marcus, what's that fancy paper you got there?" said Brian, extending his hand. "Let me see this joke." Marcus pressed the invitation against his chest, protecting it as if it were a treasure. The expensive paper, with embossed gold letters, trembled between his fingers, calloused from hard work. "It's an invitation to the company's annual gala," he murmured, without raising his eyes. Brian's laughter exploded down the corridor, attracting more employees to the small circle forming around Marcus's wheelchair. "A gala?" Brian clapped theatrically. "You hear that, folks? Marcus here is going to the boss's gala." "What's a janitor doing at a rich people's party?" asked Sharon, the other morning shift janitor. "Are they going to put you to wash dirty dishes in the kitchen?" Marcus felt his face flush with shame, but something inside him refused to hand over the invitation. For years, he had passed through the executives' offices, invisible as a ghost, cleaning tables where millions were decided while being treated like broken furniture. "Maybe it's true," he said quietly, more to himself than to the others. "True?" Brian bent down to Marcus's eye level. "Man, you really think someone would invite you to a party like that? Just look at you." Marcus looked down, seeing his worn-out cleaning uniform pants stained by the chemicals he used every day. His rough, bruised hands contrasted brutally with the thin, perfumed paper of the invitation. "I studied business administration," he said, his voice almost a whisper. "Oh, really?" Sharon crossed her arms. "And where's the diploma, Professor?" "It's stored at my house," replied Marcus, remembering the dusty folder where he kept his old documents, relics of a life that seemed to have happened to someone else. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. The accident had happened 10 years ago, 2 months before graduation. Marcus was returning from the college library when the out-of-control truck jumped the curb. 3 months in the hospital, 6 months of physical therapy, and the devastating discovery that he would never walk again. When he finally managed to graduate a year later, the job market treated him as if his disability were contagious. "You know what I think?" said Brian, snatching the invitation from Marcus's hands in a quick movement. "I think someone wants to make a fool out of you." "Give that back," Marcus asked, reaching out. "Or else," Brian continued, examining the paper against the light, "it's a fake. You made this yourself at home, right, to impress us?" "It's not fake," Marcus replied, feeling anger grow in his chest. "It came through the company's internal mail. It has the official stamp and everything." Sharon took the invitation from Brian's hands and examined it carefully. "It really does look genuine," she admitted reluctantly. "But it must be some mistake. They probably confused you with another Marcus in the company." "There's no other Marcus Thompson here," said Marcus. "Then it's a prank," Brian concluded. "Someone upstairs wants to have fun watching you make a fool of yourself at a fancy party." Marcus took the invitation back, folded it carefully, and put it in his uniform shirt pocket. "What if it's not?" he asked. "What if it's real?" "Real?" Brian roared with laughter. "You're going to arrive at that 5-star hotel in a wheelchair, wearing what clothes, and you're going to eat with what fork, and what are you going to talk about with the bosses?" "About work," replied Marcus simply. "I know a lot about how this company works." Sharon shook her head, like someone looking at a stubborn child. "Marcus, you've cleaned offices for 8 years. That doesn't make you a businessman." "I observe," he said. "I listen to the meetings when I clean the rooms. I see the documents left scattered on the desks. I know which departments work well and which have problems." Brian laughed scornfully. "You think the bosses are going to want to hear suggestions from a janitor?" "I don't know," admitted Marcus, "but I have several ideas that could improve the company's efficiency." "Ideas?" Sharon raised an eyebrow. "What kind of ideas?" Marcus hesitated for a moment, looking around to make sure no supervisor was nearby. "The finance department wastes a lot of time looking for documents because they don't have a proper filing system. The accounting staff stays late doing calculations that could be automated. The outsourced cleaning on the 5th floor costs twice what it should because the contract wasn't negotiated well. Brian and Sharon exchanged surprised looks. They had never heard Marcus talk so much or show knowledge about matters beyond cleaning tasks. "How do you know all this?" asked Sharon. "When you're invisible, people talk in front of you as if you don't exist," explained Marcus. "In 8 years, I've heard many conversations. I've seen many documents, and I have a good memory." "That doesn't matter," said Brian, regaining his composure. "Even if you know these things, no one will take you seriously at a fancy party. It'll be humiliation for sure." Marcus touched the pocket where the invitation was. "Maybe you're right," he said, "but I'll find out." "You're really going to go?" asked Sharon, incredulous. "I am." "And what are you going to wear?" insisted Brian. "That holy shirt you wear on Sundays?" Marcus didn't answer. The truth was he didn't have appropriate clothes for an elegant event. His wardrobe consisted of 3 simple shirts, 2 worn-out jeans, and his work uniform. But something inside him, a spark of dignity that refused to die, pushed him toward that golden invitation. "I'll figure something out for the clothes," he said finally. Brian shook his head and walked away. "Your life, Marcus. But don't say we didn't warn you. It'll be the biggest embarrassment of your life." When the work shift ended, Marcus took the adapted bus home, a small studio apartment in a working-class neighborhood of New York. During the entire trip, he clutched the invitation in his pocket, as if he needed to make sure it wasn't just a dream. Arriving home, he placed the invitation on the small kitchen table and stared at it for long minutes. The event date was a week away. Starting tomorrow, he would need to begin preparations. He opened the wardrobe and confirmed what he already knew. He had absolutely nothing suitable for a formal event. His savings were minimal, religiously saved for medical emergencies, but maybe he could rent a suit. That night, lying in bed, Marcus fixed his gaze on the ceiling and allowed himself to dream. He imagined himself entering an elegant hall, dressed appropriately, being treated with respect. He imagined intelligent conversations with important people. He imagined, for the first time in years, being seen as a person of value. The next day, he woke up early, even though it was Saturday. He showered with extra care, put on his best casual clothes, and went out in search of a formal wear rental shop. The first shop he visited was in a local mall. The clerk, a young woman with long nails and a bored expression, looked at him with evident disdain when he explained what he needed. "A tuxedo for a gala?" she repeated, as if the words made no sense together coming from his mouth. "That's right," confirmed Marcus. "It needs to be elegant. It's an important event." The young woman looked at his wheelchair, then at his simple clothes and sighed heavily. "Look, good tuxedos are expensive to rent. And frankly, I don't know if we have anything that fits your situation." "My situation?" asked Marcus, feeling the familiar sting of humiliation. "It's just that you're seated, right? The pant cut is different, the posture. Our tuxedos are made for people who stand." Marcus took a deep breath, controlling the urge to leave immediately. "Can I at least see the available options?" The attendant reluctantly led him to a section at the back of the store where tuxedos of obviously inferior quality were hanging. Even so, when Marcus saw the price tags, he felt his heart tighten. It cost almost half of his savings just to rent for one night. "This one might work," said the young woman, taking a medium-quality grey tuxedo off the hanger. "But it will need alterations, and we charge extra for that." Marcus touched the fabric. It was infinitely better than any clothes he had ever worn. "May I try it on?" The attendant's expression made it clear she preferred he didn't, but she led him to the fitting room adapted for wheelchair users. When Marcus looked at himself in the mirror wearing the tuxedo, he almost didn't recognize his own image. The man in the reflection looked dignified, respectable, someone who could belong in a corporate boardroom. "It looks good," admitted the attendant without much enthusiasm. "But the legs will need shortening and the waist will need adjusting. How much for everything?" When she said the total amount, including the alterations, Marcus felt as if he'd been punched in the stomach. It was almost all of his emergency fund, but looking again at his image in the mirror, he made a decision that would change his life. I'll take it." 2 days later, Marcus returned to the store to pick up the altered tuxedo. This time he was helped by the manager, a woman in her 50s who greeted him with a genuine smile. "How is our special customer doing?" she asked, bringing the carefully packaged tuxedo. Marcus was surprised by the change in treatment. "The girl who helped you the other day told me about your event," explained the manager. "Said you were very polite and kind, even though she wasn't very nice at first." "It's all right," said Marcus. "I understand it's not a common situation." The manager tilted her head, studying his face. "May I ask an indiscreet question? What kind of event is this?" "A corporate gala at the company where I work." "You must have an important position there," she commented. Marcus hesitated for a moment. "Actually, I'm a janitor." The manager's smile didn't waver in the slightest. "Good for you for having the courage to step out of your comfort zone," she said. "I'm sure you'll be amazing." When Marcus got home with the tuxedo, he carefully hung it in the closet and stared at it for long minutes. It was strange to see such an elegant piece of clothing among his simple clothes. That night, he called his sister Jennifer, who lived in Newark with her family. "Marcus," she answered, clearly surprised. "Is everything okay? You never call at night." "Everything's fine," he said. "I wanted to tell you something." He recounted the whole story of the invitation, his colleagues' laughter, the rented tuxedo. Jennifer listened to him in silence until the end. "Are you sure it's not a prank?" she asked when he finished. "I've been thinking about that," admitted Marcus, "but I decided it doesn't matter." "What do you mean it doesn't matter?" "If it's a prank, I'll find out. If it's real, I'll find out too. But I won't find out anything by staying home afraid." Jennifer sighed on the other end of the line. "Marcus, you know I support you in everything, but I'm afraid you'll get hurt. People can be so cruel sometimes." "I know," he said. "But Jennifer, I've accepted being invisible for 8 years. Maybe it's time to try to be seen. What if it really is a mean prank? Then at least I'll know I tried to have dignity." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. On Monday, Marcus arrived at work as usual, but there was a subtle difference in his posture. His colleagues noticed immediately. "What's up, Marcus?" teased Brian. "Given up on your prince fantasy already?" "The event is Thursday," replied Marcus calmly. "I'm still going." Sharon approached with a worried expression. "Marcus, we spoke with Mrs. Dorothy from administration. She said she's never heard of a janitor being invited to any gala." "Maybe she doesn't know everything," suggested Marcus. "Or maybe you're fooling yourself," said Brian. "Man, we're trying to help you. We don't want to see you get embarrassed." Marcus stopped cleaning the desk and looked directly at Brian. "Are you trying to help me, or are you jealous that I got an invitation you didn't?" The silence that followed was awkward. Brian turned red. Sharon looked away. "It's not jealousy," Sharon finally said. "It's genuine concern." "Well, thank you for your concern," said Marcus. "But my decision is made." For the rest of the week, Marcus noticed he had become the main topic of whispers among the cleaning staff. Some discreetly supported him, others thought he was making a fool of himself. On Wednesday, the day before the event, Marcus was cleaning the boardroom when he heard voices coming from the president's office. The door was slightly ajar, and he recognized the voice of the HR manager, Patricia Williams. "Mr. Richard," she was saying, "we have a problem with the gala guest list." "What kind of problem?" replied a deep voice that Marcus identified as belonging to the company president, Richard Anderson. "It seems there was an error in the system. A janitor received an invitation by mistake." Marcus felt his heart stop. He moved his chair closer to the door, pretending to clean the outer desk. "By mistake, how?" asked the president. "His name is Marcus Thompson." Apparently, the system confused him with the Marcus Thompson from the Philadelphia branch, who is a regional manager. The invitation was sent to the wrong address in the internal system. "And what's the problem? Can't we simply explain the mistake to the employee?" "That's just it, Mr. Richard. He already knows about the invitation and is planning to attend the event." "A janitor plans to come to our gala?" "Exactly. And frankly, sir, it would be extremely inappropriate. Imagine the impression it would make on our important clients and partners." Marcus felt his hands tremble as he held the cleaning cloth. His whole world was collapsing. "Well," said the president, "then let's handle this gracefully. Call the employee, explain the misunderstanding, and offer some compensation for the trouble." "Actually, sir," Patricia's voice became hesitant, "I tried that." But he refused to return the invitation. Refused? Said he had already made arrangements for the event and that he wasn't going to back out. There was a long pause. "Interesting," the president finally said. "And what kind of person is this Marcus Thompson?" "Good employee," Patricia admitted reluctantly. "Never caused any trouble. But, Mr. Richard, he's a janitor in a wheelchair. It would be a very awkward situation." "In a wheelchair?" "Yes, sir. An accident a few years ago. He's been with us for 8 years. Another silence. "Patricia," said the president, "have you considered that perhaps that's exactly why he deserves to be there?" "Sir, a man who has worked for our company for 8 years, overcoming a disability, and who has the courage to go to an event where he knows he'll be judged. Perhaps we should get to know this employee better." Marcus could hardly believe what he was hearing. "Mr. Richard," Patricia's voice was tense, "with all due respect, our clients expect a specific standard at these events." "And what standard is that, Patricia?" "Well, qualified professionals, people from the same social level, people who don't remind us that we have employees who do the work we don't want to do." The conversation was interrupted by the ringing of the telephone, and Marcus quickly moved away, his heart pounding. Now he knew the truth. The invitation really had been a mistake. But he had also discovered that the company's president seemed to have a different view of the situation than the HR manager. That night, at home, Marcus kept looking at the suit hanging in the closet. He knew now that Brian and Sharon were right. The invitation wasn't for him. It was an administrative error, a mix-up of names. But the president's words echoed in his mind. Perhaps that's exactly why he deserves to be there. Marcus took a shower, shaved carefully, and put on the rented suit. When he looked at himself in the mirror, he saw again that dignified, respectable man. It didn't matter if the invitation was a mistake. He had decided he deserved to be at that event, even if just for one night. The hotel where the gala would take place was in the central region of New York, an imposing building that Marcus only knew from passing by. He took an adapted taxi, spending more money from his already strained savings. During the ride, the driver tried to make conversation. "Special event tonight?" he asked, looking in the rearview mirror. "You could say that," replied Marcus. "First time at this hotel?" "First time at any hotel like this." The driver smiled. "Then enjoy it, man. Opportunities like this don't come around often." When they arrived at the hotel, Marcus saw the main entrance full of expensive cars and elegant people, women in dazzling dresses, men in tuxedos, all seeming to belong naturally to that environment. "Good luck in there," said the driver, helping Marcus out with the wheelchair. Marcus paid the fare and stayed for a moment watching the activity at the entrance. He could still go back home, return the suit, and forget this whole story. No one would know he had tried. But then he remembered his colleagues' laughter, the condescension of the first store clerk, the 8 years of being invisible in the company's hallways. He straightened his shoulders and headed for the entrance. The first obstacle was the security guard at the door, a large man in a black suit who stopped him with a hand gesture. "Excuse me," said the security guard, "can you show me your invitation?" Marcus took the golden envelope from his jacket's inner pocket and handed it to the man. The guard examined the paper carefully, turned it over, checked something on a list he had in his hand. "Marcus Thompson?" he asked. "That's me." The guard looked at him, then at the list, then back at him. "Just a moment," he said, stepping away and saying something into a communication radio. Marcus waited, feeling the curious glances of other guests passing by. Some stopped discreetly to observe the situation. The guard returned with a confused expression. "Everything is in order," he said, returning the invitation. "Welcome to the event." Marcus breathed a sigh of relief and entered the hotel lobby. The setting was more luxurious than anything he had ever seen. Shining marble floors, crystal chandeliers on the ceiling, flower arrangements that cost more than his monthly salary. He followed the flow of guests toward the main hall, where soft music and lively conversation could already be heard. At the entrance to the hall, an elegant receptionist greeted the guests. "Good evening," she said when it was Marcus's turn. "Name, please?" "Marcus Thompson." She checked the list and slightly furrowed her brow. "Marcus Thompson, from the Philadelphia branch." "Actually, I work at headquarters," corrected Marcus. The young woman seemed confused for a moment, but smiled professionally. "Of course. Welcome. The event is just starting." Marcus entered the hall and was immediately struck by the magnificence of the setting: round tables with white tablecloths, gleaming silverware, lush flowers as centerpieces, a small stage where a band played instrumental music, and hundreds of elegant people talking and laughing. For a few minutes he stood near the entrance, observing. No one seemed to have noticed his arrival. He was just another guest in a sea of unfamiliar faces. That's when a child approached him, a boy of about 8, clearly bored with the formal event. "Hi," said the boy. "Why are you in a wheelchair?" "Daniel." An elegant woman quickly approached, clearly embarrassed. "Sorry, he's very curious." "It's okay," said Marcus, smiling at the boy. "I use a wheelchair because my legs don't work properly." "Why?" insisted the boy, ignoring his mother's desperate signals. "I had an accident a few years ago," Marcus explained patiently. "But it doesn't stop me from doing many things." "Like what?" asked Daniel, genuinely interested. "Well, I work, drive, go to the movies, read books." "What kind of books?" "Daniel, that's enough," the mother interjected. "Let him ask," said Marcus. "I like books about management, economics, United States history." "Are you a teacher?" asked the boy. "No, I work at a big company." "Doing what?" Marcus hesitated for only a fraction of a second. "Making sure everything runs smoothly." Daniel seemed satisfied with the answer. The mother, a woman in her 40s, looked at Marcus with renewed interest. "Sorry for my son's curiosity," she said. "I'm Anne-Marie, the commercial director's wife. And you are—" "Marcus Thompson." "Ah, you must be the manager of the Philadelphia branch," she said. "I heard you had excellent results this year." Marcus did not correct the information. Instead, he smiled discreetly. "We always try to do our best." At that moment, the boy tugged on the sleeve of Marcus's jacket. "Mr. Marcus, do you know the president of the company?" "Not personally," admitted Marcus. "My mom said he's very important." "All people are important," said Marcus. "Some have different responsibilities than others, but everyone is important." Anne-Marie was visibly impressed with the answer. "What an interesting perspective," she commented. "It's not common to hear that kind of philosophy in the corporate world." "Perhaps it should be," suggested Marcus. The conversation was interrupted when a tall, elegant man approached the group. "Anne-Marie, there you are," he said, kissing the woman's forehead. "Daniel, son, are you bothering the guests?" "No, Dad, Mr. Marcus is really cool. He knows everything." The man extended his hand to Marcus. "Charles Morrison, commercial director. Pleasure to meet you." "Marcus Thompson," said Marcus, shaking the offered hand. "Thompson, aren't you the Philadelphia branch manager?" "Actually," began Marcus, but was interrupted by Anne-Marie. "Dear, Marcus has very interesting ideas about people management." Charles looked at Marcus with interest. "Oh, really? What kind of ideas?" Marcus suddenly felt under the spotlight. All the conversations he had overheard in the hallways, all the problems he had observed, all the solutions he had silently imagined, came to his mind at once. "Well," he said carefully, "I believe companies often don't properly utilize the knowledge of all their employees." "How so?" "The people who do the daily work, who are on the front lines, usually have valuable insights on how to improve processes, but they are rarely consulted." Charles tilted his head, interested. "Are you talking about operational employees?" "Among others, yes." "And how do you suggest a company go about capturing that knowledge?" Marcus took a deep breath. It was now or never. "Create real communication channels, not just suggestion boxes that no one reads. Regular meetings with employees from all levels. Incentive programs for those who present viable ideas." "Interesting," said Charles. "Did you implement something like that in Philadelphia?" Marcus realized he was being tested, but didn't know exactly how to respond without lying. Actually, I observed that this would work well here at headquarters. Here at headquarters? You know our operation? I know a little. At that moment, an amplified voice called everyone's attention in the hall. Ladies and gentlemen, please proceed to your tables. Dinner will be served momentarily. Charles tapped Marcus on the shoulder. It was a pleasure talking to you, Marcus. Perhaps we can resume this conversation later. When the family walked away, Marcus realized he was alone again and had no idea which was his table. He approached the receptionist, organizing the hall entrance. "Excuse me," he said. "Where am I seated?" She consulted a list and furrowed her brow. "Marcus Thompson, here it is, table 15. She pointed to a table in the corner of the hall, visibly set apart from the others. When Marcus approached, he saw he was alone at the table. There were places for 8 people, but only his name was on the card on the plate. He understood immediately. They had placed him at an isolated table, probably hoping he would go unnoticed during the event. He sat down and watched the hall fill with elegant people, lively conversations, laughter. He felt like an intruder, but at the same time there was something liberating about being there. For the first time in years, he was in an environment where he was treated, at least superficially, as an equal. Dinner began to be served. The waiters, professional and polite, treated him with the same courtesy extended to the other guests. The food was elaborate, different from anything he was used to eating. During the second course, he noticed an older woman approaching his table. She had elegantly styled grey hair, wore a discreet dark suit, and walked with the confidence of someone accustomed to being in charge. "Excuse me," she said. "May I sit here? My table has some very boring people." Marcus was surprised, but gestured toward one of the empty chairs. "Of course, make yourself comfortable." She sat down and extended her hand. "Margaret Davis. I'm a retired consultant, but I still do some work for the company. Marcus Thompson, pleasure to meet you." Margaret studied him with intelligent eyes. "Marcus Thompson, you don't seem familiar. Are you new to the company?" "Actually, I've worked here for 8 years. 8 years? Strange. I usually know most of the executives." Marcus hesitated but decided to be honest. "It's just that I work in a different department." "Which department?" "Custodial." Margaret stopped her fork halfway to her mouth. "You're a janitor?" "I am." She put her fork on the plate and studied him with renewed attention. "And what is a janitor doing at an executive gala?" "I received an invitation." "An invitation? How so?" Marcus told the whole story. The golden envelope, his colleagues' laughter, the conversation he had overheard between the president and the HR manager. Margaret listened in silence, asking pointed questions, clearly interested. "So you knew the invitation was a mistake, but you decided to come anyway?" "Yes." "Why?" Marcus thought for a moment before answering. "Because I'm tired of being invisible. I'm tired of accepting that my place is always in the corner, always quiet, always grateful just to have a job. I thought that even if just for one night I deserved to be in a beautiful place, treated with respect." Margaret smiled for the first time since she had sat down. "You know something, Marcus? I think you're right, and I can say that with authority, because I started as a cleaner in this company 35 years ago." Marcus looked at her in surprise. "You were a cleaner for 5 years. Then I was promoted to administrative assistant, then to assistant, analyst, supervisor, manager, director, and finally consultant. I retired as the vice president of the human resources area." "Vice president?" Marcus could hardly believe it. "The same person you saw today talking to the president about your invitation was my successor in the position," said Margaret with an ironic smile. "And I can guarantee she doesn't have half the vision I hope you have. She said it would be awkward for me to be here." "Awkward for whom?" "For the clients who never wondered who cleans their offices. For the executives who never remembered to greet the person who empties their trash every day." Marcus felt a strange emotion growing in his chest. It was as if, for the first time in years, someone truly understood him. "Margaret," he said, "can I ask you a question?" "Of course. How did you do it? How did you go from cleaner to vice president?" Margaret leaned back in her chair and smiled nostalgically. With a lot of determination, a lot of study, and above all, a lot of observation. Just like you, I saw everything that happened in the company. The difference is that I was lucky enough to find some bosses who were able to see beyond the role I performed. And they exist? Bosses like that? Some do exist, yes, and interestingly, the current president is one of them. Marcus remembered the conversation he had overheard in the office. Do you think he really thought I deserved to be here? Richard Anderson is a fair man, said Margaret. If he said that, it's because he thinks so. At that moment, the music stopped and a voice announced over the sound system, "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our president, Richard Anderson, with a round of applause." The entire hall turned to the stage, where a man in his 50s with graying hair and an elegant bearing was ascending. Marcus recognized him immediately from the photos in the company hallways and the few glimpses he had had of him in person. "Good evening, friends," Richard said into the microphone. "It's a pleasure to have all of you here with us on this special night, celebrating another year of our company's achievements." The speech continued with the year's numbers, thanks to the employees, and prospects for the future. Marcus listened attentively, impressed by the president's ability to speak about the company as a whole, not just about the executives. "Before we end the official part of the evening," said Richard, "I would like to make a special announcement." The hall fell into expectant silence. As you know, our company has always prided itself on valuing all our employees, regardless of the role they perform. Today, I am pleased to share that we have with us an employee who perfectly exemplifies this philosophy. Marcus felt his heart race. Was he imagining things, or was the president looking in his direction? "Marcus Thompson has worked with us for 8 years, Richard continued. "Some of you may not know him, because he works in a department that often goes unnoticed, but is fundamental to the functioning of our company." A confused murmur ran through the hall. People began searching with their eyes to see who this Marcus Thompson might be. "Marcus, could you please come up here to the front?" The entire hall turned to look for Marcus. When they saw him making his way to the stage in a wheelchair, the murmuring intensified. Marcus felt his legs trembling, an irony not lost on him, as he maneuvered the chair between the tables toward the stage. Hundreds of pairs of eyes watched him. When he reached the foot of the stage, Richard came down a few steps to get closer to him. "Marcus," said the president, still at the microphone, "I know your presence here tonight has caused some administrative confusion." A few discreet chuckles spread through the hall. "But I would like to take this opportunity to make it clear that your presence is not a mistake. It is an important reminder of something we sometimes forget." The hall was now completely silent. During our investigation into the invitation misunderstanding, we discovered something interesting. Marcus Thompson is not just an exemplary employee in the cleaning department. He is an attentive observer of our company, someone who, for 8 years, has followed our successes and our failures from a unique perspective. Richard paused, looking directly at Marcus. "We discovered that you have a background in business administration, is that correct?" Marcus nodded, still unable to believe he was the center of attention for hundreds of people. "And we also discovered that you have very pertinent ideas about operational improvements in the company." Marcus felt his mouth go dry, but managed to reply, "That's true, sir." "Would you like to share some of those ideas with our guests?" It was the moment of truth. Marcus looked at the sea of faces before him, executives, clients, business partners, people who had likely never paid real attention to an employee like him. "Excuse me, Mr. Richard," a voice cut through the silence. Everyone turned to see Patricia Williams approaching the stage quickly, clearly agitated. "I think there's a misunderstanding," she said, trying to maintain her composure. "Marcus Thompson is a cleaning staff employee, and while we respect his work very much, I don't think it's appropriate." "Patricia," Richard interrupted, in a tone that brooked no argument, "I have decided it is appropriate. Please return to your table." Patricia's embarrassment was visible to the entire hall. She stepped back, clearly furious, but unable to challenge the president in front of so many people. Richard turned back to Marcus. "Please, continue." Marcus took a deep breath. It was now or never. His entire life had been built around invisibility, conformity, acceptance that his place was always behind the scenes. But at that moment, with hundreds of people looking at him, he decided it was time to be seen. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, and his voice came out firmer than he expected. "For 8 years, I have had the privilege of moving through every department of this company. And when you are invisible, you see things others do not." Some people in the hall exchanged interested glances. "I've seen departments wasting time and money with disorganized processes. I've seen talented employees being underutilized because no one asked about their potential. I've seen simple problems becoming complex because there was no communication between departments." Marcus gained confidence as he spoke. "For example, our finance department spends an average of 2 hours a day looking for documents that could be digitally filed. Our purchasing department negotiates contracts separately when it could have greater bargaining power by making group purchases. Our outsourced cleaning service on the 5th floor costs 40% more than it should because no one has reviewed the contract in the last 3 years." A murmur of interest ran through the hall. Marcus noticed some executives exchanging meaningful looks. "But the bigger problem," he continued, "isn't the lawsuits. It's the waste of human potential." The room fell even quieter. "We have brilliant employees in every department, people with ideas, with a desire to contribute, but who are never heard because they are just in operational positions. We have solutions walking the halls every day, but they are invisible because the people who have them don't wear a suit and tie." Margaret, at table 15, was smiling openly. "The question I would ask," said Marcus, looking directly at Richard, "is how many Marcus Thompsons are there in this company? How many people with untapped potential are cleaning our rooms, serving our coffee, organizing our files, driving our cars, guarding our buildings?" The silence in the room was absolute now. "If I could suggest one thing," concluded Marcus, "it would be to create a real internal development program, not just for executives but for all employees. To discover who has potential, offer growth opportunities, leverage the knowledge that already exists within the company, but is being wasted." When Marcus finished speaking, the silence stretched for a few seconds that seemed eternal. Then, one person began to applaud, then another. Within seconds, the entire room was on its feet, applauding. Marcus felt tears in his eyes. Never, in his entire life, had he received a demonstration of approval like that. Richard took the stage again. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "we have just heard one of the most lucid presentations on business management I've heard in years, and it came from someone our company almost excluded from tonight for being unsuitable." More applause. "Marcus," continued Richard, "I would like to speak with you on Monday about how we can implement some of your suggestions, and also about your position in the company." Marcus could barely speak. "It would be an honor, Mr. Richard." "The honor is ours," said the president. "Thank you for reminding us of who we really are as a company." When Marcus returned to his table, he was approached by dozens of people wanting to talk, exchange cards, learn more about his ideas. Anne-Marie and Charles came to congratulate him, now knowing who he really was and even more impressed. "Marcus," said Charles, "you made us rethink many things tonight." "It was just my experience," replied Marcus humbly. "Your experience is worth gold," said Anne-Marie. "I hope the company is smart enough to take advantage of it." The rest of the night passed like a dream. Marcus spoke with executives, clients, partners. Everyone wanted to know his story, his ideas, his unique perspective on the company. When the event was ending, Margaret approached him again. "Marcus," she said, "can I give some advice?" "Of course. Don't let it go to your head. What you achieved today is just the beginning. The hard work starts on Monday." "I know," said Marcus. "I have no illusions that it will be easy." "It won't be," she confirmed. "There will be resistance, envy, attempts at sabotage. Some people, like our dear Patricia, will do everything to prove you don't deserve this opportunity." "And what if they're right?" Margaret smiled. "They're not, but you'll have to prove it every day." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out, now continuing. The following Monday, Marcus arrived at work with a mix of anxiety and expectation. He had woken up early, put on his best casual clothes, and taken extra care with his appearance. His cleaning colleagues greeted him with a mixture of curiosity, envy, and skepticism. "So, celebrity," said Brian with sarcasm, "how was the rich people's party?" "It was interesting," replied Marcus simply. "Interesting?" Sharon moved closer. "Just that?" "We want details." Marcus gave a summarized version of events, omitting some more personal details. Even so, his colleagues were impressed. "You mean the president spoke to you?" asked Sharon, incredulous. "He did, and he called me for a meeting this morning." Brian huffed. "A meeting? I bet it's to fire you in an elegant way." "Could be," admitted Marcus, "but I'll find out." At 9 o'clock sharp, Marcus presented himself at the president's office. The secretary, an elegant and efficient woman, greeted him with professional courtesy. "Mr. Thompson, Mr. Richard is waiting. You may go in." The president's office was immense, with a panoramic view of the city. Richard was seated behind an imposing desk, but he stood up and came to greet Marcus personally. "Marcus, good to see you again. Please make yourself comfortable." Marcus positioned his wheelchair in an armchair near the desk. "First of all," said Richard, "I want to apologize for how you were initially treated regarding the invitation. The attitude of some employees was inappropriate." "No need to apologize, Mr. Richard. I understand it was a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding that turned out to be a great opportunity," said Richard. "Your points on Friday were very insightful. I've already spoken with some directors, and they all agree you touched on fundamental issues we need to address." Marcus felt his heart race. "So," Richard continued, "I'd like to make a proposal." Marcus waited in silence. "I want to create a new position in the company, Operational Efficiency Analyst. You would be responsible for identifying problems in internal processes, proposing solutions and overseeing implementations. And you're offering this position to me?" "I am. With a salary 3 times your current one, a structured career plan, and the autonomy to move through all departments of the company." Marcus could hardly believe what he was hearing. "Mr. Richard, I don't even know how to thank you." "No need to thank me yet. First, let me explain the conditions." Richard leaned back in his chair. "This opportunity is not charity nor a reward for what happened on Friday. It's the company's investment in someone who has shown real potential. But you will have to prove you deserve this trust." "I understand perfectly. There will be a 6-month probationary period. During this time, you will need to present concrete results. Ideas alone aren't enough. We need measurable improvements." "And if I can't meet the expectations?" Richard looked him directly in the eyes. "Then you will return to your previous position, without resentment or embarrassment. But I'm sure that won't happen." Marcus took a deep breath. "I accept the proposal." "Great. You start tomorrow. Today, finish your current tasks and say a proper goodbye to your colleagues. Starting tomorrow, you'll have an office on the 10th floor and will report directly to me." When Marcus left the presidential office, he felt as if he were floating. In the reception area, he crossed paths with Patricia Williams, who looked at him with a poorly disguised mix of anger and contempt. "Congratulations on the promotion," she said, but her tone held no congratulations. "Thank you," Marcus replied politely. "I hope you're aware of the responsibility you're taking on." "I am aware. Because many people will be watching you, waiting for the first mistake." Marcus looked at her directly. "Then I'll have to make sure I don't make any mistakes." Patricia studied him with cold eyes. "We'll see," she said, walking away. Marcus spent the rest of the day organizing his cleaning tasks and saying goodbye to his colleagues. The reactions were varied. Some were genuinely happy for him, others clearly resentful. "Man, you did it," said Albert, one of the oldest janitors. "Shows there's still justice in the world." "Justice?" Brian rolled his eyes. "He just got lucky being in the right place at the right time." "It wasn't luck," defended Sharon, surprising everyone. "Marcus was always different. I always knew he was smarter than most of us here." "Thank you, Sharon," said Marcus, moved. "You've always been my family here." "And you'll keep being," she said. "Just don't forget about us when you're up there." I could never forget. On Tuesday, Marcus arrived early on the 10th floor. His new office was small but functional, with a desk, computer, phone, and a partial view of the city. On the desk, he found a folder with information about his new role and the priority projects. His first task would be to conduct a complete diagnostic of the company's operational efficiency, identifying bottlenecks and opportunities for improvement. He would have 4 weeks to present a preliminary report. Marcus spent the first few days visiting all departments, talking to employees at all levels, observing processes, taking notes. His wheelchair made it easy for him to move around the offices, and many people were curious about his new role. The reception was mixed. Some employees welcomed him enthusiastically, happy to finally have someone who listened to their operational concerns. Others were clearly skeptical, doubting his technical capability. In the finance department, he found exactly the problems he had mentioned at the gala. The department supervisor, Carol Henderson, a woman in her 40s with an air of efficiency, initially resisted his questions. "With all due respect, Marcus," she said, "we've worked this way for years and never had major problems." "I'm not questioning the team's competence," explained Marcus. "I'm trying to identify where we can be even more efficient." "And you think you have the authority for that?" The question was asked with a slightly hostile tone. Marcus took a deep breath, remembering Margaret's advice. "I have the authority given by the company's president," he said calmly. "But more important than authority, I have the desire to help us all work better." Carol studied him for a moment, then sighed. "All right. What do you want to know?" For the next 2 hours, Marcus asked detailed questions about the department's processes. Carol, despite her initial resistance, ended up getting involved in the conversation and admitted some difficulties they faced. "You know, Marcus," she said at the end, "you're right about the document filing. We really do waste a lot of time looking for papers, and that could be easily solved with a simple digital system. Simple for those who understand computers. Most of us here are from the paper and pen era. So part of the solution would be proper training for the team." Carol nodded thoughtfully. "You know, no one ever asked our opinion on how to improve the work." "And you have opinions?" "Plenty. But we never thought anyone would listen." Marcus smiled. "Someone is listening now." Similar situations repeated in other departments. Marcus discovered the company was full of employees with valuable ideas who had never been consulted about improvements. In the sales department, he found that salespeople wasted a lot of time filling out complex reports that few executives read. In the purchasing section, he found old contracts that could be renegotiated for significant savings. In accounting, he identified manual processes that could be automated. But not all interactions were positive. In the Human Resources Department, under the supervision of Patricia Williams, he encountered open resistance. "Marcus," said Patricia during a tense meeting, "I appreciate your initiative, but this department functions perfectly well as it is." "I'm sure it does," Marcus replied diplomatically, "but there's always room for improvement." "What kind of improvements do you suggest for a sector you don't understand?" The provocation was clear. Marcus kept his cool. "I'm not suggesting anything yet. I'm just trying to understand how things work." "And then you'll write a critical report for the president, is that it?" "I will write an honest report about the entire company, including the positives and the opportunities for improvement." Patricia leaned back in her chair, studying Marcus with cold eyes. "You know, Marcus, I admire your courage, but sometimes courage can be mistaken for arrogance. I have no intention of being arrogant." "No? Then explain to me how someone who worked 8 years as a janitor feels qualified to analyze specialized departments." The question echoed through the room, where other HR employees were present. Marcus felt all eyes fixed on him. "Patricia," he said calmly, "I worked 8 years observing this company from a unique perspective. I saw problems that went unnoticed because I was in a position that allowed me to see connections between departments. My qualification doesn't come only from my previous experience, but from my ability to observe and analyze." "Observe and analyze," she repeated with irony. "How convenient." Marcus felt the tension in the room increase. Some employees seemed uncomfortable with the boss's open hostility. "Patricia," he said, "if you have specific objections to my work, I'll be happy to discuss them. But if the objection is just to my presence here, perhaps we should talk to the president about that." The silence that followed was awkward. Patricia clearly didn't expect Marcus to respond so firmly. "I have no objections to your work," she said finally. "I just question whether you have enough experience for the role you've taken on." "The only way to prove experience is through results," replied Marcus, "and I intend to deliver results." The meeting ended in a tense atmosphere, but Marcus left with valuable information about HR processes, obtained mainly through discreet conversations with employees in the sector who were more cooperative. By the end of the first week, Marcus already had a clear view of the company's main operational problems. More importantly, he had identified that many of these problems weren't technical, but related to communication and the utilization of employees' knowledge. At the end of Friday, Richard called him for an informal chat. "How was the first week?" asked the president. "Revealing," replied Marcus. "This company has incredible potential that isn't being fully utilized." "In what sense?" "We have brilliant employees in all sectors, but they don't feel empowered to contribute beyond basic tasks. We have processes that work, but that could be much more efficient. And we have a culture of working in silos, where each department functions in isolation." Richard nodded. "And what would your proposal be to change this?" "I'm still developing detailed ideas," said Marcus, "but I believe the solution rests on 3 pillars: better communication between sectors, utilization of operational employees' knowledge, and investment in basic training and technology." "Interesting. Continue the work. I look forward to seeing your preliminary report." Over the weekend, Marcus worked at home, organizing his notes and developing preliminary proposals. He was determined to prove he deserved the opportunity he had been given. In the second week, he began implementing some minor improvements as a test. With Richard's authorization, he created a simple digital filing system for the finance department. The results were immediate. The time spent searching for documents was cut in half. The news spread quickly throughout the company. Other departments began seeking out Marcus to discuss possible improvements in their areas. "Marcus," said Charles Morrison during a casual encounter in the elevator, "I heard you achieved an impressive improvement in finance." "It was just better organization of the files," said Marcus modestly. "Simple but effective. Exactly the kind of practical thinking this company needs." But not everyone was impressed. Patricia Williams began a subtle campaign to discredit him, questioning other executives whether it was appropriate to give so much autonomy to someone with limited experience. Marcus learned of this through Margaret, who still maintained contacts at the company even though she was retired. "She's trying to undermine your credibility," Margaret warned over coffee. "Be careful of her." "What do you think I should do?" "Keep producing results. In the end, results speak louder than politics." "What if she convinces the president that I'm not fit for this role?" Margaret smiled. "Marcus, Richard didn't get to where he is by being easily manipulated. He knows how to evaluate results. Keep doing your job and let the results speak for you." By the end of the second week, Marcus had his first direct confrontation with Patricia. She had called a meeting with other directors to discuss concerns about the new operational analyst position. Marcus was not invited to the meeting, but Richard was. After the meeting, Richard called him into his office. "Marcus, I need to talk with you about some issues raised by the directors." Marcus felt his heart tighten. "What kind of issues?" "Patricia raised concerns about your work methodology. She said you're interfering with established processes without consulting those in charge." "Mr. Richard, all the changes I implemented were discussed and approved by the supervisors of the departments." "I know, I checked." Richard looked at him directly. "Marcus, you're doing excellent work, but I need you to understand there will be resistance. Some people feel threatened by changes, especially when those changes come from someone they considered lower in the hierarchy. How should I handle this resistance? Keep doing your job, be diplomatic but firm. And remember, you don't need to please everyone, you need to produce results." In the third week, Marcus decided to implement his most ambitious idea, a pilot program for improvement suggestions involving employees from all levels. The proposal was simple. Once a week, operational employees from different departments would meet with their supervisors to discuss problems and solutions. The best ideas would be implemented quickly, with public recognition for those who suggested them. To his surprise, participation was immediate and enthusiastic. Employees who had never had a voice in the company came forward with creative and practical ideas. Mary Johnson, a third-floor cleaning assistant, suggested a reorganization of cleaning schedules that would save 2 hours a day without losing quality. John Miller, a company driver, proposed an optimized delivery route that would reduce fuel costs by 20%. Karen Roberts, an administrative assistant, presented a way to simplify the requisition process that would eliminate 3 unnecessary bureaucratic steps. Within 2 weeks, the pilot program had generated 12 effective implementations, with measurable savings in time and money. The impact was extraordinary. Employees who once felt undervalued now saw themselves as active participants in the company's success. Overall motivation increased noticeably. "Marcus," said Richard during an evaluation meeting, "this suggestion program is brilliant. The results are exceeding all expectations." "The results aren't mine, Mr. Richard. They belong to the employees who finally had a chance to contribute." "Exactly. And that's the genius of the idea. You're not trying to be the company's savior. You're creating a system where the company saves itself. But the program's success has also intensified resistance from some departments. During a general directors meeting, Patricia attacked directly. "Richard," she said, "I'm concerned about this excessive democratization of decision-making processes." "How so, Patricia?" "Giving a voice to operational employees in matters they don't fully understand could create more problems than solutions." Marcus, who was present at the meeting presenting the month's results, remained silent but attentive. "What kind of problems?" asked Richard. "Well, employees without proper training might suggest changes that seem good on the surface, but have negative consequences they can't foresee. Do you have any specific example?" Patricia hesitated. "No, not yet. But it's a matter of time." "Patricia," intervened Charles Morrison, "with all due respect, the results speak for themselves. We've had concrete savings of 15% in operational costs just this month." "Short-term savings," insisted Patricia. "We don't know what the long-term effects will be." Marcus decided to speak up. "Patricia, I understand your concern. That's why all suggestions go through technical analysis before implementation. Nothing is changed without supervisor approval and assessment of possible consequences." "And who performs this technical assessment?" "You." The provocation was clear. Marcus took a deep breath. "Me, the supervisors from each sector, and when necessary, external consultants. No major change is made unilaterally. But who supervises you, Marcus?" "The company president." Richard spoke up for the first time. "Patricia, I think your concerns are premature. The results so far are overwhelmingly positive, and the program has adequate controls. Let's continue for 2 more months and evaluate again." Patricia didn't hide her frustration, but there was nothing more she could say without directly challenging the president. After the meeting, Charles sought out Marcus in the hallway. "Marcus, a piece of advice, be careful with Patricia. She won't give up easily. Why is she so resistant to the program?" Charles looked around to make sure no one was nearby. "Because your program's success exposes the mediocrity of her department. In 10 years as HR manager, she never produced significant improvements. Now you, in 1 month, are showing how to extract potential from employees in a way she never managed. It's not a competition. For you, it isn't. For her, it is. And people like that can be dangerous when they feel threatened." In the 4th week, Marcus finalized his preliminary report. The 40-page document detailed 23 operational problems identified, 15 solutions already implemented with measured results, and a strategic plan for the next 6 months. The numbers were impressive: 15% savings in operational costs, a 20% increase in overall productivity, and significant improvement in employee satisfaction, measured through an internal survey. Richard read the report over the weekend and called him for a meeting on Monday morning. "Marcus," said the president, "this is one of the most impressive reports I've ever read. The results are extraordinary." "Thank you, Mr. Richard. But I want to make clear these are just the preliminary results." "How so?" What we've achieved so far are improvements to existing processes. The company's true potential will only be unlocked when we implement deeper structural changes. Richard leaned forward, interested. What kind of structural changes? A comprehensive internal development program, allowing employees to grow within the company regardless of their initial background. An interdepartmental communication system that eliminates departmental silos. And an incentive program based on collective results, not just individual ones. That would mean a significant overhaul of the organizational culture. Exactly. And that's why it needs to be done gradually, carefully, and with the full support of the board. Richard fell silent for several long minutes studying the report. Marcus, he finally said, I'll be direct with you. I'm impressed with your work, but I'm also concerned. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. Concerned about what? About the resistance you're facing. Some directors are questioning not only your proposals, but your legitimacy to make them. And do you agree with them? No. But I'm just one person in a company with hundreds of employees. If the resistance grows too much, it could compromise the entire program. Marcus understood the complexity of the situation. What do you suggest? That you continue producing results, but also that you start building alliances. Convince the directors that your proposals are valuable, not just for the company, but for them personally. How? Show how the improvements you propose can make each department look better, more efficient, more profitable. Turn them into allies, not adversaries. It was wise political advice, but Marcus realized it would be an immense challenge. In the following days, Marcus began a discreet relationship-building campaign. He scheduled individual meetings with each director, presenting specific proposals for their departments and showing how the improvements would directly benefit their areas. With Charles Morrison from sales, he presented a plan to streamline the sales process through better communication between the sales, finance, and delivery departments. With the marketing director, Lucy Taylor, he discussed how operational improvements could be used as a competitive differentiator in customer communication. With the financial director, Andrew Wilson, he detailed the savings already achieved and projected even greater future savings. The strategy began to work. One by one, the directors became convinced that Marcus's work benefited their specific areas. The resistance diminished, and some even became active defenders of his proposals. But Patricia remained unmoved. If anything, her opposition had intensified as Marcus gained more allies. The final confrontation happened during a presentation by Marcus to the entire board of directors. He was presenting his plan for the second half of the year when Patricia interrupted him. Marcus, she said, your proposals are interesting, but I have a fundamental question. Go ahead. Do you really believe someone with your background and experience has the credibility to overhaul the entire operational structure of a company this size? The silence in the room was total. All eyes turned to Marcus. It was the moment of truth. Marcus looked directly at Patricia, then at each of the directors present, and finally at Richard. Patricia, he said calmly, my credibility doesn't come from my background or my previous experience. It comes from the results I've produced in the last 2 months. He turned to the board. In 60 days, this company has saved $200,000 in operational costs. Overall productivity has increased 20%. Employee satisfaction has reached its highest level in 5 years. Dozens of processes were optimized, and hundreds of employees feel more valued and motivated. Marcus paused, letting the numbers sink in. Patricia asks if I have credibility for this role. I ask, what more credibility is needed beyond concrete, measurable results? But short-term results, began Patricia. Sustainable results, interrupted Marcus, based on structural improvements, not temporary measures. Every change implemented was designed to last and improve over time. Andrew Wilson, the financial director, spoke up. Patricia, as the person responsible for the company's accounts, I can guarantee that Marcus's results are solid and real. The savings are measurable, and the productivity improvements are positively impacting our profit margin. Charles Morrison agreed. In sales, we feel the effects of the operational improvements directly in our ability to serve customers faster and with higher quality. One by one, the other directors expressed support for Marcus's work. Patricia was isolated in her opposition. Richard ended the meeting. I believe the results speak for themselves. Marcus, congratulations on the excellent work. Continue with the plan for the second half of the year. After the meeting, Patricia approached Marcus in the hallway. You won this battle, she said quietly, but this isn't over. Patricia, replied Marcus, I'm not fighting against you. I'm working for the company. If you decide to work with me instead of against me, we all win. Work with you? She laughed bitterly. Marcus, you don't understand how things work around here. People like you don't rise in this company's hierarchy. People like me. People who got here by luck, not by merit. Marcus looked at her calmly. Patricia, if you think I can threaten your position, perhaps you should ask yourself why you feel that way. She stared at him angrily for a few seconds, then walked away without answering. In the following months, Marcus consolidated his position in the company. His improvement programs expanded to all sectors, the financial results remained positive, and his reputation as an efficient analyst spread even to other companies in the industry. Richard called him for a meeting at the end of the 6th month. Marcus, the time has come to evaluate your probationary period. Marcus knew he had done a good job, but he still felt a knot in his stomach. I want to start by saying you have exceeded all expectations, Richard continued. In 6 months you have transformed fundamental aspects of this company's operation. Marcus sighed with relief. Thank you, Mr. Richard. But that's not all. You have inspired a cultural change that goes far beyond operational improvements. The employees feel more valued, departments work better together, and we have a more collaborative and productive environment. Richard paused. Therefore, I want not only to confirm your position, but also to promote you to Director of Operational Efficiency, with your own team and a budget to implement even more ambitious changes. Marcus could hardly believe it. Director? With all the responsibilities and benefits of the position, and I want you to assemble a multidisciplinary team, including employees promoted internally from the programs you developed. It was more than Marcus had ever dreamed of. Mr. Richard, I don't know how to thank you. Just keep doing what you're doing. Keep showing that a person's value isn't in the title they hold, but in the contribution they can make. When Marcus left the president's office, he found Margaret waiting in the reception area. So, she asked with a smile, Director of Operational Efficiency. I knew it! She hugged him emotionally. Marcus, you did it. From janitor to director in less than a year. I still can't believe it. You can believe it, and you can be proud. You've proven that competence and determination are more important than social origin or elite education. As they walked down the hallway, Marcus saw several employees greeting him warmly. Mary Johnson, the cleaning assistant who had suggested improvements to the schedules, stopped to greet him. Mr. Marcus, she said, I heard about your promotion. That's wonderful. You deserve it. Thank you, Mary. And you deserve recognition for your contributions, too. You changed everything around here, she said. Now we know our opinion counts for something. That was exactly what Marcus had dreamed of achieving. In the months that followed, Marcus implemented even more ambitious programs. He created a mentorship system where experienced executives guided internally promoted employees. He developed a corporate education program that offered training courses for all employees. He established an innovation fund that financed the implementation of the best ideas suggested by employees. The company transformed. Financial results improved consistently, but more importantly, the organizational culture changed profoundly. Employees at all levels felt valued and actively contributed to the collective success. Marcus became a national reference in people management and operational efficiency. He received invitations to speak at universities and business conferences, always emphasizing the importance of valuing human potential regardless of origin or hierarchical position. But the story wouldn't be complete without mentioning what happened to Patricia Williams. 6 months after Marcus's promotion, Richard called her for a meeting. "Patricia," said the president, "I need to talk to you about the future of the HR department." She already knew what was coming. The people management practices that Marcus implemented have proven to be much more effective than our traditional methods. We've decided to completely restructure the human resources sector. And my position? You have two options. Accept a transfer to the Newark branch, where you can apply the traditional methods you prefer, or take early retirement with a generous compensation package. Patricia chose retirement. At her farewell party, Marcus made a point of being present and greeting her cordially. She received him with a mixture of resentment and resignation. "Marcus," she said, "I admit you proved your worth." "Thank you, Patricia. But I still think you got lucky." Marcus smiled. "Perhaps. But I also learned that sometimes we need to create our own luck." 2 years after the gala that changed his life, Marcus was again at a company elegant event. This time, however, he wasn't at an isolated table. He was on the main stage, receiving an award for innovation in business management. In the audience, he saw familiar faces: Richard, who had become a mentor and friend; Margaret, proud as a mother; his former cleaning colleagues, now in better positions thanks to the internal development programs; and dozens of employees whose lives had been transformed by the new organizational culture. When he took the stage to receive the award, Marcus remembered the night he had arrived at that same hotel, alone, scared, using his savings to rent a suit. The difference wasn't just in professional success, but in confidence, dignity, and the recognition of his own worth. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said into the microphone, "this award isn't mine. It belongs to all the employees of this company who had the courage to believe their ideas had value. It belongs to all the executives who had the humility to listen to suggestions coming from anywhere. And it belongs especially to those who are still invisible in their companies, waiting only for an opportunity to show their potential." The applause was long and warm. "I learned that true business success doesn't come from rigid hierarchies or elitist knowledge. It comes from recognizing that every person has something unique and valuable to contribute. It comes from creating environments where everyone feels respected, heard, and valued." Marcus paused, looking at the audience. 3 years ago, I was just an invisible janitor. Today, I am a director of a large company. But the real transformation wasn't in my professional position. It was in discovering that my dignity never depended on the title I held, and that my worth as a person always existed, regardless of whether others recognized it or not. When he finished the speech, Marcus stepped off the stage and was greeted by hundreds of people. But the one who moved him the most was Daniel, the boy he had met at the first gala. Now 10 years old, he approached with his mother. "Mr. Marcus," said the boy, "do you remember me?" "Of course I remember, Daniel. How are you?" "Good. My mom said you became famous." Marcus bent down to the boy's eye level. "Daniel, you know what I learned? That being famous isn't important. What's important is making a difference in people's lives." "Did you make a difference?" Marcus looked around, seeing the faces of employees who had found new opportunities, of executives who had learned to value their teams, of an entire company that had discovered the power of including rather than excluding. "I think so, Daniel. I think so." That night, when he got home, Marcus took off the elegant suit he now wore naturally and looked at himself in the mirror. The man he saw in the reflection was the same one who had rented a suit 2 years earlier, but he was also completely different. He hadn't changed physically, and his wheelchair was still his daily companion. But there was a certainty in his eyes, a dignity in his posture, a confidence that came from knowing he had found his place in the world. He picked up the phone and called Jennifer, who now followed his journey with pride and admiration. "So, brother, how was the award ceremony?" "It was good, Jennifer, but you know what was better." "What?" "Knowing that I can finally sleep in peace, knowing I tried to be the best version of myself. Marcus, I always knew you were special." "We are all special, Jennifer. We just need the opportunity to show it." When he hung up, Marcus stayed for a few minutes on the balcony of his new apartment, looking at the city below. He thought about how many people at that very moment were feeling invisible in their jobs, underestimated because of their appearances, limited by others' prejudices. He thought about how many Marcus Thompsons there were around the world, waiting only for a golden invitation, real or metaphorical, to show their worth. And he smiled, knowing that his story had become bigger than his personal experience. It had become proof that dignity is not begged for, it is earned. That worth is not declared, it is demonstrated, and that sometimes a company's greatest treasures are hidden in the places no one thinks to look. The moon shone over New York, illuminating millions of personal stories, millions of guarded dreams, millions of potentials waiting to be discovered. Marcus Thompson had discovered his, and in doing so, he had shown the way for others to discover their own. End of story. Now tell me what you thought of this journey of overcoming and human dignity. Did Marcus's transformation move you? Leave your honest opinion about this story in the comments. Do you believe situations like this can happen in real life? We would love to read your thoughts. Thank you so much for your company in this moving story.